My name is Cathal O'Donovan, Secretary of Skibbereen Flood Committee, and we're an ad hoc voluntary group, an ad hoc voluntary committee. We have 7 core members, but we'd have a very wide support from the community at large. The first few slides deal with the background history and they show how we arrived at a scheme. And I think for people here now in the last couple of presentations, you might find the last couple of slides that I have in terms of what work has to be done in order to get where you want to get. I think you'll find them interesting. The last couple of slides then deal with our particular involvement in a local capacity in local flood events. If I could, I suppose, referring to Tig there in the last 2 presentations, everybody knows that there are no 2 floods the same. There are no 2 flood solutions the same. And in the context of what we're talking about here today, my presentation is different to Tig's, and Tig's is different to the one before and the one that comes after. So if I could start with the first slide there, which is a Google map of the town of Skibbereen, and that basically is the basin of the town there. This is the town here with all the buildings in it, right? That's the main river coming through, heading out to Baltimore, which is 8 miles away, and it's tidal. These other tributaries coming in here are all part of the flood scheme, and they all have to be protected and to protect the houses and the residences around. When we get a flood, this large catchment area, there, which heads back up to Dunmanway, it's about, we'll say, 16 miles by about 12 miles. So it's a large enough catchment area. The water flows from there into town, and that's the first type of flood that we get. And if we get 50 mils of rain over, we'll say, 24, 36 hours, we're going to get a flood, right? Now, I'm quoting figures here. We could be a lot more accurate than that, but I have to speak fast, right? The second type of flood that we get is from any flash floods which we get, which we know were evident here in the last couple of days as well. And generally speaking, that comes from the south side of the town here. And the third contributory factor then, of course, is the tide coming in from Baltimore into Skibbereen. Now, as a result of all of that, with the tidal, river and flash flood situation, our particular scheme is designed coastally in terms of tidal for a 1 in 200 years flood, and for rainfall, it's a 1 in 100 year flood. So there's a combination factor there. And it's designed, of course, to protect 179 homes and 131 commercial premises. Moving on. Flooding history, 30 flood events since 1943, right up to 2010. And in the last 7 years, you know, only yesterday I got some figures from an engineer which would indicate that we would have had 7 or 8 events since 2010, which, you know, within 1 inch or 2 inches of your business or your household, where the possibility is getting flooded. So the threat is there all the time. And while we are 1 year into our scheme, we have another 2 years to go. We're definitely not free, not free from flooding until the scheme is completed. I also mentioned 1943 there because 1944, was the first year that flooding in Skibbereen was raised publicly in Dáil Éireann by an independent TD by the name of P.J. O'Driscoll, right? And here we are 70 years on. I just mention it as a matter of course in history, right? 70 years on, and we're pretty close to completing the scheme. In terms of procurement, I'm not competing now with Mark Adamson or Cyril McCarthy here, right? Because I think maybe it was I stole their statistics and figures maybe rather than the other way around. But anyway, coming from where we're coming from in Skibbereen, we had the procurement situation, which is the responsibility of the Office of Public Works, which is basically all the contractual arrangements, right? Ultimately, that's their responsibility. In our situation, I think it's probably maybe different to other schemes by virtue of the fact that Cork County Council are agents for the OPW in the scheme, and then the consultants appointed were MCOS RPS, and then the main contractors were John's Engineering, who were from Duleek, County Meath. in the context of the European backdrop again to this, the European directive in 2010, that directed the OPW and the country at large to have their flood risk maps and those flood risk maps then leading into flood management plans. And as far as I know, in our scheme in Skibbereen, we've had 12 flood risk maps leading into 15 management plans. In other words, the scheme itself would be divided up into maybe 15, 16 different areas, right? And each one of those would have a flood management plan. So for people who are not involved in a scheme or haven't had a scheme up to now, I can tell you the amount of detail that goes into designing and executing any scheme is enormous. We had all those previous flood reports. Just a drop of water, please. We had all those previous flood reports, and it was they didn't materialise until 2010. One of the reasons for that was because we had a road relief scheme, which is bypassing the town. Thank you. We had a road relief scheme bypassing the town, and that kind of mitigated against any flood relief scheme being put into operation until such time as that was complete. And as you know, in order for a road relief scheme to be implemented, that's going to take quite a number of years as well. So I suppose we were waiting from the 70s right through until about 2010 for things to move for us on a flood scheme, because we'd be inclined to think as well, you know, up until recent times, the last infrastructural job that might be done in any town was flooding, because flooding is not a sexy committee to be on, right? Okay. For our particular scheme, there were 23 further surveys carried out between 2010 and 2014. That's 9 of them there, right? And there was another 13, right, before the scheme could go ahead, right? Okay. This is important, I think, from the point of view of people who want to get a scheme going, whether it's minor works or whatever. After the 2009 flood, an all-party Oireachtas committee came to Skibbereen. Now, we are non-party, but, you know, we will have to give credit where credit is due at any stage, we always have. But an all-party Oireachtas committee chaired by Sean Fleming visited Skibbereen. That was in January 2010, after the 2009 flood. Minister Manser came as well in the month of January, and then following on into November in the same year, Minister Manser gave a commitment in principle to a full-scale Skibbereen scheme. He didn't say at that stage he was providing the money yet, but nevertheless, we're talking about stages, and we're talking about stages of recognition of the problem. And then later on again, Minister Manser announced that the Skibbereen scheme would be included in the capital project for going from 2012 to 2016. So that was all good news, right? And part of, yes, okay. It involved 5 work stages, 1, 2, 3, 4, the feasibility preferred option. That was completed roughly October 2013. Stage 2, environmental and assessment and planning, 2015. That would have gone on for 3 or 4 years. Stage 3, the detailed design, which is the one that we'd be all looking for, that if the detailed design is finished well, the scheme is very close to going ahead, and that would have been completed around December 2014. And then construction, the contract was signed in June 2016. That involved earthen embankments, 1.4 kilometres, reinforced walls, 1.6 kilometres, 1.8 kilometres sheet piling, and then a couple of water pumping stations as well. How are we in time? All right. Sheet piling again, that's on the river, and don't worry about those. They're all hammered down at this stage, so they're all very even, right? And I happened to ask an engineer one day, what was the lifespan of those sheet piling? You know, just wondering, would I be flooded again before I'd head off to the operational lands, the atmosphere? And he said 103 years, so no problem there, right? This slide that Cyril had already as well, here's the rugby pitch here, sorry, the rugby pitch, and that then is the agricultural livestock mart, and both of those now are very well protected. You can see the capping on top of the wall there, and I asked Ezra a while ago, there's concrete comes down from that as well. Is that quite finished there? Concrete cladding comes down from that as well. And in some instances, of course, you'll have the earthen mounds as well. And, of course, as Cyril showed earlier on, the stone walls as well would all be part and parcel of you could say, of the fortification, right? Okay, this is an important one, which was mentioned again, needless to say, by Mark Adamson a while ago, the statutory public involvement, right? But while that's important from where we're coming from, is because those figures there of 104 people in attendance on that public consultation day in the 23rd of March, 186 people in attendance on the 25th of January 2012, and 62 people in attendance who made submissions, right? That didn't just happen. I was talking to an engineer one time in the context of some other, not a flood scheme, but some other similar situation, and he told me that they had a similar setup for whatever construction project they were doing, and they had 4 people turned up. 2 were objecting, 1 was a tourist, and the other fella, I don't know what the other fella was doing, right? Now, that wasn't much of a reflection from a local community if they wanted done what they wanted done. So we succeeded in getting all these people out, getting the interest into people so that they turned up, and understandably, from an OPW or a Cork County Council point of view or whatever, if they come into your town to do whatever they have to do, the very least that the community has to do, if they want the job done, is to show confidence in the scheme and go in and say hello and have their chat, which they did. Coming on to the local involvement, we have one of these, I know they have one in Scotland as well, right? We have one of these as well, right? The containment, right? And this would be our normal preparation for a flood. We have the sandbags, we have barriers, and what Michael, chairman of the Irish National Flood Forum, has in his hand there is a couple of cables, a couple of steel cables. And this is an indication of just where a little bit of savvy comes about as a result of the last flood and what happened and what should have happened and didn't happen. And then we come back and we check it out and we see what can we do. We came to a flood before this, right? Nighttime, water pouring in, 2 feet of water coming up the town, and you're looking for these. This is the sewage system, and there's about 7 traps up the length of the street. But it doubles as a water sewer system in time of flood. So if you can open those traps, because way up over here in the marsh, there's 3 major pumps, and when they're set in motion, by God, do they suck water. They suck massive amounts of water. So in time of flood, they can be used, right? Our big problem was, 2 o'clock in the morning, looking for these, poking around, couldn't find them, with mud and different things in the water, right? So, in consultation with the engineer, there's a cable there. You can't see it, you see there. There's a cable going across to Carl McCarthy, the retired sergeant there, right? At the opposite side. And that's number 5 station. And that cable is the exact length from number 5 over to the opening in this. And we have one for number 4, number 3, number 2, number 1, and number 7 and 8 up along. So, and they're all different lengths, but they're all numbered. So you come out on the night, on a flood, attach it to the wall, the relevant number, cross to your thing, you know where it is, and then you use your gadget here for lifting up the trap, and you're away for Slate. And this is just an example of the small little things that, after every flood, you need to look into, and you need to rectify for the next flood. So, that's all that there. What about a little bit of paid sandbags? We've done that, right? Okay, when our response to floods then, right? So I said to you that on that catchment area there, coming from the manway, we would have about 6 hours of a time lag before the water hits town. So what do we do in the meantime? We check 3 re-engages in the locality. We get the forecast nationally on RT or whatever, and the other weather stations, right? And there's a river gauge 1 mile from town, and we won't go into it. It's the river gauge reads in meters, and it's linked electronically, and we can use our smartphones, and we can check into that at any time, no matter where you are, we make the phone call onto the system, and we get a reading for the height of the river. If the height is, we'll say 7.9, we're okay. If it's 8, it's going to flood Mill Road. If it's 8.1, it'll flood Townsend Street. And if it's 8.2, we're all in trouble, right? So, very handy system. Then, the engineer locally, who is responsible in this context, he calls a meeting of the staff, the Garda Síochána, Civil Defence, Fire Service, Floods Committee, maybe on occasion it might be the ambulance service, and it could be the coastal service as well, the aquatic coastal services, right? And he calls a meeting, and we decide on strategy. And when we decide on strategy, the service disperses and everybody goes about and fulfills their responsibilities, okay? Then we come back after every 2 hours. We come back and we sit down and we discuss again. And after another 2 hours, come back either before the flood or during the flood. Every 2 hours we come back and we discuss again until the flood is over. And when the flood is over, then, at the same time, after every 2 hours, we text the 180 people who will be flooded directly by flooding. So they are getting an update all the time of what the situation is. They're wondering, and we're able to tell them. And when we're finished, we have a post-flood analysis, so we're prepared for the next flood. Flood committee meetings, that's us. About what, 2 and 7, 9 and 6, 15, 8, 23, 2 to 4, 2, 6, 2, 8 and 6, 14. About 146 meetings from 2010 to 2017. And I can tell you that's conservative. That's just committee meetings. There's not meetings with officials, etc., etc. Over 320 emails. And then we had public meetings as well to inform the public during this time. 2010, 2012, 2013. We weren't going to bring them in 2011 if we had no information. We weren't going to bring them in, halfway through 2012 if we had no information. But when we did, we had 68 people in attendance, 82 and 89 people in attendance. So all of this is terribly important in the community to get people exercised enough if they want to look after themselves and if they want to see that they're going to, that they're going to get their problem solved. Meetings with government. They're all the people that we would have met over the years since 2009. Minister Manser, Senator Dennis O'Donovan, Brian Hayes, Simon Harris, Sean Kenny, Kevin Boxer-Borden, Jim Daly TD, Noel Harrington TD, Michael McCarthy TD, Brendan Howland, and then, of course, our local councillors and our county councillors. And couldn't but say for the OPW, Cork County Council, the consultants, our local representatives, all the political representatives, we engaged with them continuously. There wasn't a day passed in the last 10 years. We're at it a lot longer than that, but there wasn't a day passed, let alone a week passed, winter or summer, where we weren't engaging with somebody in the context of what we're talking about. And then we arrive where we're at today. And we couldn't say enough for all the bodies involved and all the politicians, because politicians are, they can be criticised left and centre. There's only 24 hours in a day. There's only so much they can do. But they can do a hell of a lot more if you engage with them positively, let them know what the situation is, give them a couple of solutions that might be feasible, right? And they'll come along and they will help and they will do their best. And that has been our experience, and we stand over that. Okay. Now, as opposed to sheet piling and everything else goes with that, that's the finished product in the first section that was done in town. That place was a building site, a massive building site, in front of those houses there. And that's the way it's finished up there about 6-7 months ago. And that's the way we expect the town to be finished in the latter end. And could I point out, when the scheme is finished, there'll be enormous opportunity there for the Architectural Service and Cork County Council, plus the Tidy Towns, plus other agencies, to build on what the OPW have done. The infrastructure is there now, and move ahead and move on. And the town will be a vastly better place when it's finished. I think that's it. Okay.